Good morning and welcome back to the home of common sense, the place where you go to get some interesting information which is not in fact fake, which is not in fact manufactured, and which is not in fact anything other than pure, unadulterated, decent, honest opinion. And I'm delighted to say that in this particular hour, myself and Kevin O'Sullivan, joined by Peter Hitchens, the man, the legend, the man from the Mail on Sunday, who's been talking to us for the best part of about a year, I imagine now, Peter.
Finally we're in the same room.
And finally we're in the same room, although I've got a little story for you about the last time we were in the same room, which you've probably forgotten about, which I don't blame you for at all. But we are here, we're in the pub, we're in the Horseshoe Pub, which is our local pub. We're in the shadow of the Shard, of course, around the corner from London Bridge Station. It's a fantastic place. We are opening it because today is the first day, apparently, that you're allowed inside a pub. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's actually not. We've got a couple of drinks here. Peter's refusing to have a drink on the grounds that he won't be told when he can drink and when he can't drink, which is entirely in keeping with what you would expect. We are, of course, taking all of your tweets and all of your thoughts on the text as well, 87222 at talkRADIO. You're listening to me, Mike Graham. This is the Independent Republican, Mike Graham, and we're in the pub.
Mid-morning with Mike Graham. Talk Radio.
I'm going to tell you something that you may have forgotten about. The last time you and I were in the same room, it was in the old, I say the old Daily Express building, but the grey Lubianka as opposed to the black one.
The one that's now been flattened.
The one that's now disappeared,
yeah.
Incredibly. It wasn't up for very long. And Bill Clinton was still president. You were, I think, special correspondent or columnist or something. I was in conference with you. I was, I think, at the time, foreign editor or something like that. And it was that long ago. It was sometime in the sort of mid-90s.
So that building sort of disappeared along with all the Daily Express readers.
Well, indeed.
Don't be unkind.
That's a very harsh thing to say to a man who is still in the newspaper business.
Well, he's not at the Daily Express. He's in a very
no.
successful newspaper.
The fact that you and I have both been fired out of it and have had to find a suitable alternative employment in the radio business is a different matter altogether. But anyway, welcome. Good to see you.
It's very good to be here.
You're looking well. As you say, you don't fancy a drink today.
Well, I do fancy one, but I will not be told when I can start. I remember quite clearly the last time I went into a pub. And I went up to the bar and I bought a drink,
yes,
which I believe is still impossible.
Yeah.
And I don't really think that a thing like buying a drink at a pub is something you should listen to the government about. It's not for them to tell you when you can or when you can't do it. So I'll do it when I feel like it, not when they tell me.
Yes, no, it's interesting. I was walking today through London Bridge Station on a route that I don't normally use. And the number of signs struck me today for some reason. You know, don't do this, do that, walk here, don't walk there, wear a face covering, be kind, you know, wash your hands. Breathe in, out,
breathe out.
Left
There's a wonderful
forward.
one I saw the other day at Reading Station, which was take care while minding the gap.
It is, but
you'll be so busy thinking about, shall I mind this gap this way or that way, that you forget to take care and you fall into the gap anyway.
Too busy reading the signs to see the train coming and then miss it. You know.
Yeah, what did you do in the coronavirus war, Daddy? Well, we followed arrows in a pub.
But that's it. Then there was an announcement that came over. You know, the one where they go, you know, report. What is it? Watch, sort.
Oh no,
see it, sort it.
See it, sort it.
Say it, sort it.
Yeah, which doesn't make any sense at all.
And I thought to myself, this is a bit like one of those science fiction films where you're walking through a public building, somebody's announcing something at you, and everything you look at is a sign, and everyone walking towards you is wearing a mask. And I'm going, when did this all actually happen?
Well, it actually did happen. We are in the invasion of the body snatchers, or maybe in Minority Report, we're in another world. And we all happily walked into it. Well, most of us did. You didn't, I didn't, but here we are. And most people are content with it.
Are we going to walk out of it similarly, though, do you think?
I see no reason to believe so. I think many people enjoy it, feel comforted, and are made to feel safer by it. And they will accept a lot of this going on forever. I wonder whether we will ever, for instance, get rid of the face mask.
Well, this is interesting, isn't it? Because my children, my teenage children, have been told this week they don't need to wear one anymore, despite the fact that last week they had to wear one, and so much so that last week they were still trying to force them to wear them on Friday, but Monday it's fine.
Well, this is extraordinary. Mind you, school children never, ever should have been made to wear masks in the first place, and it's extraordinary that they got away with it. But you see it, the thing is, we've discussed this before, walk down the street, see how many people are wearing face coverings in the open air. They've never been told to. The advice has never been to do so.
No.
And yet the numbers probably are increasing. And I think this is a sign that many people welcome this and enjoy the regimentation and the absence of initiative in return for a feeling of illusory but strong feeling of safety.
My favourite was my favourite thing are the drivers in their own cars on their own. with a full face mask on. And there was a picture in the papers the other day of a woman down in Bournemouth swimming in the sea 50 yards out on her own with a face mask on while swimming.
That's good. Yeah. I was walking in some woods yesterday and I sneezed. And a person about 100 yards away heard me sneeze and took a long detour around me.
Yeah. Because the trouble is,
surrounded by cow pasture, you do sneeze.
Yeah, Julia Hartley-Brewer said this the other day, that the people who seem the most frightened of this are the people who seem to know the least about it, because we've all sort of become epidemiologists to some extent. Certainly if you're in the media, you've been writing about it, talking about it for a year. But an awful lot of people are frightened by what they think could happen without actually knowing what will happen.
Well, an American friend of my wife recently wrote to her, she's come to live in a village in Hampshire. She said, what has happened? What has happened to education? What has happened to thought? There doesn't seem to be any understanding left of the scientific method of how to think, nor any understanding left of the idea that people are allowed to disagree politely and rationally. Yeah. It's gone completely, and she's completely baffled coming from outside, from a part of the United States where people do still think that this is going
and where
on.
Personal responsibility and freedom is actually still words that can be said.
Well, yes, you can still say them here. But the problem is that as soon as you try to apply them in practice, people say, "Where's your mask?"
Peter, yesterday the Mail on Sunday had a fantastic leader, which sums up what I think a lot of people are thinking right now. The government keeps saying we're going to tackle wokery, we're going to battle it face on, we're going to get rid of it. They keep talking the talk, but they never walk the walk. Now, you wrote in your excellent column yesterday about the death of common sense. You know, we like to boast that Talk Radio is the home of common sense, and we still tell it like it is. And yet, around the country, wokery is destroying common sense. What is going on here? Will the government finally get to grips with this pernicious problem, do you think?
Well, I hope so, but I very much doubt it, because if you remember, the Conservative Party itself went through a politically correct revolution under David Cameron. It decided, under huge pressure, I have to say, from the Labour Party to do so, and also pressure from the BBC, which pretty much let it know, if you knuckle under to all this Blairism stuff, then we will once again treat you as a serious party. Until then, we'll just mock and jeer at you and treat you unfairly.
Yes.
That, I think, was the unspoken deal. It may have been spoken, for all I know. There were meetings, but that was the deal. And the Tory party went woke. Particularly under Theresa May, and but the whole attitude of the Tory party towards all the sex, drugs, and rock and roll revolution which had been going on in New Labour for the previous 10 or 15 years was turned over by David Cameron, who went to his party's conferences and more or less said to them, "I hate you, and these are the things I'm going to do, which are going to annoy you. Tough. I'm leader now, and you'll have to put up with it." And they did, and they have. So I don't know where the Tory party is going to find the knowledge, understanding, or resolve. My problem is this. I am a former Marxist revolutionary, so I understand how Marxist revolutionaries think and work, and I understand what's happened. And I look around and I try to explain to people this huge, long march through the institutions of all the people who I was at university with in the late 60s, early 70s, has now reached a point where every single institution in the country is controlled by the new thinking. And this instance of the private school chaplain who's now in deep trouble for actually making what seems to me to be an entirely rational, tolerant sermon is an example of this. And when the Mail on Sunday approached the Archbishop of Canterbury, so are you going to support this guy? The words which came back were the immortal and lyrical words which you might expect from someone in the Church of England. No comment.
Yes,
yeah,
of course.
This would
he was too busy ticking a box which said you have to get rid of all these statues up and down the churches.
So he's much too busy getting rid of statues of people who might conceivably be involved in the slave trade.
What is that about? The thing is that the church has had a torrid time for the past year because it has been unable really to issue pastoral care to its various congregations. It has been unable to communicate with the people. Now we're coming out of lockdown. It's the Church of England's big chance. What does the Archbishop of Canterbury say? Don't worry about your congregations. Take a clipboard, go out into your graveyards and have a look at your artifacts and your stained glass windows and check whether or not there are any connections with slavery. What on earth is he thinking?
No, but this is what you must understand. Every institution that you thought was sensible, which had common sense in it, which had experienced people in it who understood what the world was really like. When you actually come up against them on any issue like this, on any of these clipboard issues, you find very rapidly that a person you previously thought was sensible and looks just like a normal human being talks to you as if he was in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, as if his mind or her mind has been taken over. And everybody knows that they have to behave in accordance with this. If you apply for a job, you put in your pronouns now. Because if you don't, then people might say, well, we're not going to employ this person.
Yeah, because you're obviously transphobic.
You have to assume it. And the idea that people have that, say, for instance, big business is conservative, or the church is conservative, or private schools are conservative, or the police are conservative, or the courts are conservative, or the civil service is conservative, it's not true. Every single one of these has now been taken over by people like me. Only the difference between them and me is I grew up, and they didn't. They're still they don't bother with the old slogans of the 1960s anymore. They've moved on, but they are still basically revolutionaries.
And they've also
start the world over again.
But they've turned their back on the masses. And Dan Hodges actually wrote what I thought was quite an interesting column this weekend, in which he said it's not that Keir Starmer and the Labour Party don't understand their voters in the north. It's that they don't want to listen to them. They don't like what they've got to say. They don't really like them at all. They certainly don't like what they believe in.
Well, most party leaders hate their voters, but they we will remember
they wish they didn't have to deal with
the Gillian Duffy episode. The famous occasion when
that bigoted woman
Gordon Brown talked to one of his voters, and actually I think she voted Labour in that election after he'd publicly insulted her. But I think she's since, if you check out, she definitely voted to leave the European Union. And I suspect that the Gillian Duffy episode had no immediate effect. Was actually a starting point when a lot of Labour voters realised that they were actually being led by people who despised them. The fascinating thing is that Tory voters don't seem to have cottoned on yet, that their leaders despise them too.
No, and in fact, I think it's right to say that the Tories probably deep down now have become, as you say, just as woke as Labour were. Under Cameron, you couldn't tell the difference between Cameron and Blair to me.
Well, that was the whole idea.
The same idea, the same guy.
Cameron denied it over and over again, but he did call himself the heir to Blair at a private dinner with journalists, and he actually did do it, and he meant it. And George Osborne referred to Blair as the master. They were completely in awe of this. They admired every aspect of it, and they copied it.
It's unbelievable. Because also listening and reading your column at the weekend, talking about the whole Palestinian thing. Kevin and I were talking about this before. That an awful lot of people in this country are not very interested in Israel versus Palestine. The lefties are. Jeremy Corbyn was out marching with his Palestinian flag, and again, people are saying now that actually they care more, the Labour Party, about people in the Gaza Strip than they do about people in Hartlepool.
They're obsessed.
And you made an interesting point that a friend of yours says something similar about the Middle East.
Well, the problem with the Middle East is that it's a great place to exercise your conscience in somebody else's country. And the less you know about it, the easier that is to do. I've had the great good fortune to go to that part of the world many times, including Gaza and the West Bank and Israel. I've talked particularly to the Israeli Arabs, that fascinating minority who are undoubtedly mistreated, but on the other hand are probably much better treated and have more rights than any other Arabs anywhere else in the region, which is a bizarre paradox, if you like. And my friend who's an Arab Israeli there said to me after driving me up to Ramallah through huge numbers of barricades and checkpoints, he said, for the good old days before we had peace. Because all this intervention, all these attempts by well-meaning Western people showing off their consciences from
including Tony Blair, of course.
Well, Blair a bit, Clinton particularly badly, and of course the Oslo attempt, which Clinton got Rabin and Arafat to shake hands on the White House lawn, a ridiculous occasion at which I was present. And these things did not actually improve the conditions of Arab men, women and children in the region. And if you really care about that, then, and I think people should, because they really do need help, support. And the last thing you want is another round of political negotiations. And
another round of political leaders trying to make a name for themselves and get themselves the Nobel Peace Prize, which by now surely has been ridiculously kind of
Palestinians of East Jerusalem who got sort of occupied, they apparently often say, well, It's not great, but ever since the Israelis occupied us, we've been getting our dustbins collected all the time. So there are sort of useful bureaucratic.
Yeah, I don't get carried away on that. I think that was a particular bit of Jerusalem where Israeli settlers started to move in and the dustbins started. There's no doubt. There is discrimination, and particularly over water.
Yeah.
And over land, and Israel is not a perfect country, but then it is by no means the only imperfect
But of course, in the
world.
background to all of this recently, and this is apparently one of the reasons why people who support Palestine are now even more upset than they were a year ago, is that they've now Israel have done a deal with the UAE. Saudis are quite happy to help them out because they don't like Iran very much, and it's all a very complicated picture, which can't really be explained by somebody with a loudspeaker shouting "Free Palestine" outside the Israeli embassy.
No, it can't. And I just wish that I could communicate to more people the experiences I've had in that part of the world and the complexity of it, but also very much the enormous ability to show goodwill among the ordinary people on both sides, which is blocked by political leaderships who wish to grandstand and make. And remember, in this case, the Palestinian supposed parliament has not had an election for years. They've repeatedly postponed. Yeah. And Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, is unable, after election after election after election, to assemble a majority in the Israeli Parliament. And this may have a lot to do with the mess that we're in at the moment. What is the problems of the people?
What is the root of Labour's obsession with Palestine? Today, Keir Starmer on his Twitter thread is posing in front of a Palestinian flag, obviously connecting with the British voters on that issue. But
I think he always has. I don't think it's just.
But
today.
why are they so obsessed?
I don't think something particularly new about this.
But why are they? Why are they so obsessed?
Britain has had a particular role in this. I mean, Britain was the country which effectively set up Israel by establishing a national home for the Jews in 1917. And we are deeply involved in this, and so it comes into our politics all the time. The astonishing thing is that having done that, Britain then spent most of the next 40 years trying to get out of the promise that it had made. And it's never been, it's always been a source of deep controversy in British politics, and it's not exclusively the Labour Party that has taken that side. And conservative governments have very often taken the Arab side in that particular quarrel.
And what happens next with the Tory party, though? Because we've been seeing stories being written, I suppose, all weekend and probably before that the Tories' lead is now apparently unassailable over Labour. Labour can't really get back into a two-party system. Particularly, we see Scotland basically going rogue against the Home Office last week when two illegal migrants were stopped from being arrested by the Home Office, and the Scottish government came out and said, well, of course, we don't appreciate this hostile environment that's coming from England. More or less. I mean, we're in not a very good place.
Well, this is a huge part of it. Will there be a United Kingdom 15 years from now?
Yeah.
Will Scotland still be part of the same country? Will Northern Ireland be part of the same country? And when that happens, how long will it be before the issue of Welsh independence comes up? And these things have huge implications for Westminster politics. But the other thing is, how long can the Tories, if they don't do something about overcoming the woke revolution, how long can the Tories hold on to the votes that they've got from people who are sick of Labour for being taken over by wokery? When they discover what the Tories are really like, are they going to say, are we going to go back to Labour? No, I don't think so.
No. I personally think Labour are not going anywhere. I think Labour are done.
I think Labour may well be, and their equivalent party in Germany has been, replaced by the Greens.
Yes.
I think that may be the future, especially once Scotland has gone, because without the hope of regaining their seats in Scotland, I don't see how they can really hope to get a majority again, unless there's some utterly unpredictable cataclysm that we can't even begin to see.
No, quite. Well, Peter, great to see you. Thank you very much
Likewise.
for stopping by. And I don't know whether to ask you if you're going to be celebrating later your newfound freedom, or whether you're just going to ignore the fact that
I don't think I have anything to celebrate. I still think I think that my cause has effectively lost. I feel like someone who was belonged to a party that lost an election, although it had a very good set of policies. Now those of us who were against all this hysteria and misunderstanding have to try and make sure the truth gets told so it doesn't happen again. It's a much, much more difficult task than you might think. I don't know how we're going to do it. So I really have nothing to celebrate, but it's just a very nice pub. I plan to be back.
We'll come back in
as soon as I can actually walk up to the bar and pay for a drink with money.
With you. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
I feel your pain. I think a lot of people do. But we're here. Actually, we've got a tab running, so we're not paying for the drinks at all, and somebody's paying for them. But
there's no such thing as a free drink.
No, that's absolutely right. Absolutely right. I am, of course, in the words of George Galloway, when he used to say, "You never mind bribing British politicians or newspapermen, because they'll do terrible things without even being offered anything."
Thank God you cannot bribe or twist the
That's
honest British journalists, but seeing what the man will do unbribed, there's no occasion.
There you go.
Exactly right. He's got a much better
Great.
brain. He's a much better memory
That's
than
the
me.
one.
Well done. Peter Hitchens for the Mail on Sunday. We'll be back with Lee Anderson MP and much more. This is Talk Radio.
Across the UK, online, on DAB+, and on your smart speaker.
That was a tactical decision that made sense when cases were very low. Of course, now cases are through the roof.
Talk Radio.